Previously on X-Men.
What's up all you muty loving dudes and dudettes, ToyShiz here, and I'm back again to give you another Retro-Shiz look back at the past, and today we're going all the way back to 1997 with the Toybiz, the X-Men animated series Monster Armor action figure set, and this was actually interesting, I will say. Not exactly my cup of tea for back in the day. You could see the old-fashioned packaging, especially that Toys R Us sticker on there. Love to see, and kind of getting toys nowadays, see that old sticker on there. It takes me back, you know what I mean? Here is the bit of the plot, if you want to screen grab it, and then each of the characters would have a little bio, so to speak, with what is going on, and you'd see, here's Cyclops, and then here's the snap-on armor, but in really kind of giving a story to these and looking back at it now, different time, different day, but oh so 90s, and to see what they're doing with Marvel Legends and X-Men now, it's quite a treat. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a nice hot cup of coffee. This is the 1997 Toybiz Monster Armor X-Men the Animated Series action figure set. And of course, here are each of the figures out of their respective packaging, and you'll know pretty much every single one of them if you're an X-Men fan. From villains to heroes, Mystique, Mr. Sinister, a very beaten up Wolverine, let's say, Rogue, and of course, the leader, Cyclops, who, as I've gotten older, Cyclops has grown on me, you know what I mean? X-Men the Animated Series, though, I think they best represented him, and Mr. Sinister was always that sinister guy playing the strings in the background, but just in terms of talking about putting all this snap-on armor, it's a lot of fun. But we wouldn't be here today without the interference of Dr. Nathaniel Essex, Mr. Sinister to you, looking all kinds of 90s animated goodness. Very, very cool to see. Very nicely painted figure, I will say that. It's got its big drape cape going on, or whatever you want to call that thing. Looks good in all angles. Yes, that's how they did it back in the day, and when you have that in a design, I applaud them for getting it to that point. But very pre-posed. Again, paint is nice. Little cape comes off, just basically snaps around his neck. And then you would start to snap on his cybernetic armor. Whereas the rest of the figures, as you'll soon see, have more monstrous mutation-looking properties going on. Mr. Sinister dons basically a suit of armor. Not really something he's done himself, but basically an Iron Man sort of situation, maybe to aid him in his nefarious schemes. Really done nicely, sculpted beautifully, nice paint overall. It's different. It's totally just crazy, you know what I mean? But in terms of putting it on him, yeah, you'll have some trouble kind of fitting around his head. That's the one thing that I noticed. The hands, the fingers, they all move. It's very cool. A little bit of a Game Boy screen. Throws him off balance incredibly. You're going to have to use the hand to make him stand, but a very cool, very 90s looking character, very 90s action figure, and while he is different, I do highly recommend him just for being so off the wall crazy. But well, you know what's not crazy is the Southern Belle Rogue. Well, maybe not so much in the face, we'll see. But she is looking like a 80s jazzercise sort of costume going on, and I do believe that this was in the comics at some point. Big tuft of white hair, really nicely detailed, sculpted hair, little folds in her costume every which way, nice paint. Not exactly my favorite costume for Rogue, but unfortunately for her, she was apprehended by Mr. Sinister with the help of the dreaded Sauron in his Savage Land compound, throwing all kinds of switch, levers, you name it, they got it. And they're going to operate on the rest of these X-Men and turning them into something foul. Mr. Sinister doing all kinds of sinister experiments, and Rogue is unfortunately transformed into the dreaded Leech Bat. And it's quite an amazing sculpt. I gotta give it to him all day for this. What better thing to turn Rogue into than a vampiric sort of bat creature? Really nicely sculpted bat wings. The paint is nicely done. She's got big, huge haunched legs that fit onto her legs. We'll just say that. She's got a snap-on chest piece, snap-on head piece. It's different. As you can see on the back, and much like the rest of the figures, it's mainly for goods in the front. As you can see, her hands are very visible on the backside. But even Remy LeBeau, Gambit, he's looking at her going like, oh shit, that's not for Gambit. Figure does make a excellent silhouette. Very, very cool to see this. Again, so 90s, something you'd totally expect. Doing her best fan dance. I always like to say that, but a very cool Rogue figure. But then we also have the villain Mystique, who I'm all but assuming tried to help Mr. Sinister recruit the X-Men, get him here to this Savage Land compound. And she's looking fantastic, I will say. This is one of the best Toybiz Mystiques that was made. Pretty much one of the only sort of Toybiz Mystiques that was more spot on with the comics, the animated series, how she was portrayed. But looks like she failed because Mr. Sinister just wasn't having any more of her screw-ups. Sauron was like, you know what? Let's just totally transform her as well. Flip the switch, diodes, electrodes, all that kind of stuff. And Mystique, no more shapeshifting. She's permanently transformed into the She-Beast. And this is another one where I'm just like, they went all out, man. They were just trying anything that stuck, and it came out looking very cool. I like the colors on this Mystique. It emphasizes the blue and the white, and then also incorporates skulls. But on the backside, as you can see, much like the Road figure, it's for front side use only. And it's very, very cool. Just in terms of how everything snaps, everything fits well, but even Hank McCoy's going like, I don't know about this. But it is nice to see the different colors, the fact that they turn her more into like a beast mode. I like they incorporate the skulls from her costume. How that fits really in the mutation is beyond me. But it's a very cool Mystique, and if you just wanted a normal Mystique for your collection, you could leave the armor off, and she fits in fantastic. Now we come to Wolverine, and his healing factor is not going to make much of a difference in this situation. Nice sculpt on him. I like the tattered shirt. He's all beat up. It's a bit of a wonky design, though. He's got really long fingers on his hands. No claws, whereas adamantium was all the rage back in the day. No bone claws, no nothing like that, just FYI. But it's the face. Face is okay. I like the tatteredness of his boots, the big black parts that kind of jettison out. Those are cool. I like what they did there. It's very stylized. And of course, yes, he met the same fate as all the other characters so far. Flip the switch, do all that good stuff down in the Savage Land. And unfortunately, he's been turned into the FANGOR creature. Big blue beastie utilizing all of his animalistic properties. Whereas this is one of those Wolverines that doesn't have his adamantium claws. He's in turn exchanged them for these big claw extensions out of his wrist. That's what's meant to evoke. It's not so much adamantium claws anymore. It's almost like fingers. Very cool painted toes, toenails. The blue fur really emphasized. Wolverine, oftentimes, a lot more blue going on in the 80s and 90s through his hair. No help from Jubilee on this one, that's for sure. Wolverine has always been depicted as more of a feral, monstrous creature, and a lot of Toy Biz toys took advantage of that, especially when you look at the Onslaught wave or even the more mutant and monsters sort of thing when he was turned into a werewolf. So again, going with that animalistic side of Wolverine, the FANGOR is not too much out of the realm of possibility, but is a very cool, very well painted action figure. And of course, we are then left with the leader of the X-Men, good old Scott Summers, Cyclops himself. Very nicely painted. I like the bright blues and the yellows of this figure. Very different from the light up one that I have that I primarily use for my Toy Biz lineup. I'm just not too keen on the face. If he looks more sad than he is screaming or shooting out one of his plasma bursts. You know what I mean? It's just off-putting in that sense, but it does fit with what's happening with this particular figure. More like almost to that height of Jean Grey that was in the Onslaught wave, just FYI. But of course, much like Rogue and Wolverine, he suffers the same fate in Mr. Sinister's Savage Land base. Flip the switch, throw the levers, and he is transformed into the dreaded CYCLAW. And of all the figures of this wave, this one is my absolute favorite. Just in terms of the Cyclops figure, the colors, but you snap on all this bone protrusion armor, like he just looks like a mess of flesh and guts. A giant eyeball. He's got bones sticking out of the flesh that was his feet and his legs. Scott Summers is looking very worse for wear. I think he got the worst out of all of these characters, just between you and I. But it's so cool, sculpted so well, painted so well. It just looks uncomfortable. It looks terrifying. It's the last thing I think you'd want to be mutated into. But dang, they nailed it. Hands down, favorite one of the line. So that is going to wrap it up for my look back at the 1997 Monster Armor X-Men The Animated Series line by Toy Biz. What do you guys think about this wave? Did you have them back in the day? Do you have to get them now? I think back a lot on this. I saw these on the shelves. These weren't my thing, you know? But in looking at them now, with having almost near perfect renditions of 6-inch style Marvel Legends X-Men, these are fun. There's something to them. It brings back nostalgia. It brings back good old-fashioned fun toys. And I highly, highly recommend them if you can still grab them. They should be readily available. But I'm curious to know what you guys think. Comment below, let me know, and let's talk everything X-Men. And I'm going to leave you guys with that. As always, drink some great coffee, eat some great food, but most importantly, remember, Gene is definitely not helping you on this one. And when you do, let me know what you found. I'll talk to you guys soon. Adios.